Yeah, welcome in. Welcome back to another episode of the Format Podcast. Here we go back to the NBA. Got an interesting show for you here today. I'm going to talk some Adam Silver and Kevin Garnett, and this should be a good one. Definitely something that I've touched on for a while, so can't wait to get into that with you. But before we do, if you haven't already and you're here on YouTube, you know what time it is. Go ahead, click that subscribe, that like, and that notification bell, so you can stay with us and be made aware anytime new content drops on the channel. If you're interested in the audio only version of the podcast, we're pretty much anywhere audio podcasts are found. Go ahead and just give us a search in your audio podcast platform. Make sure you share the podcast with other people you know who might want to hear a different voice and different thoughts on the sports topics of the day. Make sure you give us that 5-star review as well. And please do that because it helps us rise in the algorithm, helps us find more sports fans, helps more sports fans find us. Now let's get right to it. So, you're not new to the channel. You already know how I feel about defense in the modern NBA and scoring in the modern NBA. Tons and tons of threes, right? Most games are a three-point shootout. There are many, many open threes. It seems like the entire point of most offensive sets are to get open corner threes or open threes on the hole. I can't tell you how frustrated I get and how many times I've seen just in this playoff run, but just in general in the modern NBA, how many times good twos and layups are given up for a kick out to a long three-point attempt. Hey, I know the analytics say threes are better than twos, but if you get enough twos, it makes it all worth it. Anyway, so some of the supposedly all-time elite offensive players play in the modern era. Guys like Kevin Durant, excuse me, guys like the newly minted scoring champion LeBron James, guys like Steph Curry, et cetera, and James Harden. No one is saying these guys aren't great. No one is saying they can't score. The argument I've always made is that the defensive rules, and say what you want, argue if you want, just go ahead and look up Stu Jackson 2006 comments on defense. The defensive rules and the changes that have been made, and you can also look up Adam Silver 2018 comments on defense in the NBA. The way the rules have been changed and implemented, it simply makes it easier for players to score. That doesn't mean they're better offensive players. That means there is less resistance. There's less resistance in perimeter defense. If you just watch the game, say in 1994 versus 2023, you'll see there are many, many less elite rim protectors. Back then, you had Patrick Ewing, Hakeem Olajuwon, Shaquille O'Neal, Alonzo Mourning, David Robinson, Mount Mutombo, Dikembe Mutombo, that is. So you had a whole bunch of elite, all-time great shot blockers in the league back then. So if you did get to the rim and beat your man, well, then you had to deal with one of those guys. And there's very little of that in the modern NBA. So anyway, the reason I bring all this up is recently we're seeing clips from Kevin Garnett having a sit down with NBA Commissioner Adam Silver. And Kevin Garnett, we know, is one of the elite big men of all time on both defense and offense. And that is a guy who hung his hat on defense. He came into the league in 1995, the year before Kobe, straight out of high school in Chicago, I think Farragut Academy. And this is a guy who, you know, he was defensive player of the year. He's been an MVP. He's been multiple time all NBA first team defense. He's a champion, etc. And so he understands just how important defense is. And so you can see, and you can hear in his commentary with others, how much it hurts him the way defense is played or not played in the modern NBA. And so anyway, one of the things he talked about with Adam Silver was, will there be a return to defense as we once knew it? So let's go ahead, hear those comments. Here KG asked that question to Adam Silver, and hear Adam Silver's response, and then we'll come back and discuss it.
Is the high scoring working? Is speeding the game up? I asked this with a follow-up because I want to know, will there ever be a time in our lives where the hand check comes back? Is that going? Is this kind of the wave in which we're going now?
I'll answer it coming from the fan in me, which is, and maybe data comes into play here because I can look at television ratings and other measures of interest. There was a point, I believe, you know, probably in around the late 90s when the game became too physical. And I think we lost some of
For our viewers, you mean?
Yeah, and I think for our fans, from the aesthetic enjoyment of the game, where it de-emphasized the particular skill a player had and maybe weighted too heavily physicality, where a big, strong player could come in and prevent a incredibly skilled player from doing those kinds of things. I think of, not that he's a small guy, but a smaller player like Steph Curry can do on the floor. I think that when you think of some of his ability to shoot, his ability to move through the paint, that if guys could just bang him and knock him to the ground, as that was once the case in the league,
Right.
I don't think that would be a better brand of basketball. I also think we have to find the right balance, because I know when I sit in the stands or talk to friends sometime, they want to bring back, and we've tried to bring back a little bit more of the physicality. Like, I think people like to see hard defense. I mean, it goes a little bit before to what you and I are talking about, like touch and feel. Like, I don't think either people like that idea that guys can go through unscathed and like you're protecting your star players. And in fact, we made some changes this season where sort of, I don't know, the unnatural basketball moves, you know what I'm referring to, and where those were being, players were gaming the system in a way.
Catching
and
on.
they brilliant players playing by the rules had found ways where those were becoming defensive fouls. So we reset this year, which is something you got to do in the offseason. You don't want to change mid-course, but we made it clear, those players, that that's no longer going to be a foul. And of course, because they're the greatest players, they adjust and they find other ways to score.
So you can see KG is a fiery, emotional type individual, and that was very relevant. That was very prevalent throughout his playing days in the NBA. And you could see, just hearing him talk about basketball in the NBA, even since he's retired, you could see that fire hasn't diminished, right? Obviously, he doesn't get to vent it on opponents anymore, but just hearing him talk about it. And so you couldn't see it on this clip. You could hear it, but you couldn't see it. And if you were to, I think the clip is on Twitter and on YouTube, etc. But if you watched it, you could see it almost pained KG when he was asking Adam Silver, like, do you think the hand check will ever come back? Will we be able to see some more physical defense, or is this what it is? And so Adam Silver, it was very interesting. And I took it when he responded to that question and said he wants to respond like a fan. And he couched the situation and he couched his explanation from the perspective of a fan. I was really offended by that. And the reason why I was offended by that is because it almost sounds like he thinks people are stupid, right? Now, I understand that many fans, especially modern younger fans, want to see the up and down, the run and gun, the three-point shot, the dunks, all that. And so you get more of that with decreased defensive resistance, right? So they change all the rules. But what frustrates me is that Adam Silver is acting like people are dumb. And why is he acting like people are dumb? There's a couple reasons why. But it all comes down to the money. It all comes down to the money. When did this first really start happening, right? The 2005 NBA Finals between the San Antonio Spurs and the Detroit Pistons, two elite defensive teams, was, I believe, the lowest rated television finals of all time, because a lot of people didn't want to see two elite defensive teams. The games were slow and thus considered boring. But really, if you're playing against an elite defensive team and you score, that means that you had to either execute or rebound extremely well. And those are two key components of successful and winning basketball. So I don't think that there's anything wrong with that, right? It's like people don't want to see great defense, but the fact is, if somebody is averaging 25 or 30 in a league that is very defensive, that means that they earned it. And that's why I always talk about you guys like your Mitch Richmonds and your Michael Jordans, et cetera, those guys from back in the day who were scoring points like that against that type of physical defense and that type of elite schematic defense. That means that they were really elite offensively, your Kobe's, et cetera, right? So if you're scoring a bunch of points in a league that's just basically shooting a ton of threes and defense is not allowed, you can't touch anyone, well, it's not quite the same. I always talk about degree of difficulty. So anyway, Adam Silver is playing it as if we don't know that that's all about the eyeballs, right? And what? The eyeballs leads to advertising. Advertising leads to what? Dollar bills. So it's all about money. And then, of course, what's the other factor? Gambling. Sports gambling is legal in many states now, and the leagues are in bed with sports gambling. And if there's low scoring and not a lot of excitement, people are not going to want to engage in gambling. People are not going to want to put their money up, their hard-earned money. So it all comes down to the money. So when Adam Silver tells us, well, I'd like to answer that from a fan perspective, you're being disingenuous, Adam Silver. And we get it. You work for the owners. You work for the league. So the goal is to maximize profit, as it would be in any business. And I don't have an issue with that. But when you try to play me like I'm stupid and say, well, I want to look at it from a fan perspective, well, What's happening here is you're also watering down the game, because you're seeing, while people seem to think that this is the best era of the NBA ever, it's really not. Yeah, it's fast, and yeah, it's exciting, and it's high scoring, but that doesn't mean it's the best. Okay, it's the same thing I always talk about. If I ran 100 meters and I ran it uphill, and you ran 100 meters and you ran it flat, is your time really faster than mine? No, probably not. I mean, technically it's faster because you completed the course more quickly, but you didn't have the same degree of difficulty that I had. So that's where all this comes into play. But yeah, Adam Silver, let's not try to play people like they're not, like they can't think, right? I'm not stupid, and it offends me when you give me a response like that. But what I want to know from you is, what do you think of the rules that are designed to manipulate our defense and boost offensive production? Do you think that that makes today's players more skilled and gifted offensively, or do you think that they're taking advantage of situations that allow them to be more prolific? Leave those comments in the comment section. Can't wait to hear them. Can't wait to respond to them. Talk to you soon. Next episode, and I'm out. Peace.